Let's look at your politics generally. You've been resilient in politics, tracing your antecedents and trajectory. What comes readily to your mind when you think or hear politics and political leadership?
Okay, first, if it is not about service, then it shouldn't be termed politics. Service has to be the first thing in your mind. I would say that in our climb, it has become war, more or less. Ordinarily, some of the things that happen pre-election, during election, and post-election shouldn't happen, where people are service-minded. So for me, politics should be service, and it takes human beings to provide service. It takes human beings to provide governance. We must also know very quickly that when the politicking is over, governance has to start. Perhaps that is where we get it wrong. When after elections, people embark on these litigations that drag on. For example, we did elections in March, and up till January, that would be 9 months. We are in one court or another trying to litigate. If you ask me, I'll say it has been 9 months of needless distraction and low service delivery to the people who voted us into office. So I want to believe that if you call yourself a politician, you should know that elections are in cycles. When this one ends, you wait for the next one. If you are persistent, maybe one day it will click for you. The story of Buhari is still very fresh in our minds. He kept trying and trying until the day he got it right. That is not to say that he also didn't litigate. He litigated, all true. But you will see that President Jonathan gave Buhari a very clean takeoff. He didn't litigate. Despite the fact that he could have litigated, he didn't litigate. And yes, maybe they missed the opportunity to use that time well. But that should be the model for each and every one of us. After elections, you relax, leave the courts. The courts are also made up of human beings, and they are also liable to make errors. And when I say errors, take the case of Plateau State, for instance, where the court descended into the arena of even wanting to set up structures for a political party, PDP, wanting to know if there was a structure or not. Even after the Supreme Court had repeatedly, in several decisions and rulings and judgments of the Supreme Court, had said these are internal affairs of political parties. So sometimes when politicians drag these things too much, they end up embarrassing the judiciary, which is the famous last hope of the common man. The hope becomes hopeless at the end of the day, and then you have situations where you cannot go back and cannot go forward. It is instructive. Maybe we will learn from what has happened in Plateau that this is not how things should be done in going forward. The courts are there, yes, to try all cases, yes. Election matters are very special. How we came to a point where after presidential election, there are only 2 steps of the judicial process of the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court. For the National Assembly members, for the House of Assembly members, the same 2 steps, the Tribunal and then Court of Appeal. But for the governorship, it is 3 steps. You start from the Tribunal, you go on appeal, and then you go to the Supreme Court. I think something should be done about the laws. I believe that for the governorships, you can do 2 steps like you do for the presidential. That will save a lot of money, to save a lot of time, so that those who have been voted in for a 4-year term can really do minimum 3.5 years, as against doing barely 3 years. I don't think that we're getting it right with the electoral laws. Something needs to be done to rejig the laws and reduce areas of litigation. And perhaps that is where INEC comes in. If the INEC process is free and fair, there will be minimal litigation. What has dragged us back since 1999 has been litigations upon litigations. I don't think this country can take more of that. It is time to start putting the structures in place for proper democracy, proper rule of law, and proper development of the country.
You're the chairman House Committee on Education in Delta State. Education has become more interesting in the recent time. When we say drift and migration, it's mostly the educated Nigerians that are felt leaving the shores of Nigeria. But essentially, let's look at education in Delta State, your state. We see so many universities, especially the state universities and other institutions of higher learning springing up. What is the education policy of Delta State as it is conceived in the House of Assembly?
Okay, first, let me come from the area of brain drain. That one has nothing to do with education. It has to do with governance and the policies of government. Because the person who is embarking on brain drain has been educated up to a level, so the person chooses to leave. As for the policy from the perspective of the House of Assembly in Delta State, it is very simple that every child of school age should and must be in school. And that is why at the primary and secondary levels, education is virtually free in Delta State. Now, if you do your research, you will discover that the biggest industry in Delta State is education. And that is why government found it wise, and with our support, our very strong support, to establish extra universities and other tertiary institutions in Delta State. If you go to those schools today, you see that they have population. It is because Deltans take education as priority. Even the illiterate man in the village wants to produce a doctor among his siblings. He wants a lawyer among his siblings. He wants an engineer amongst his siblings. He wants to have graduates. In those days, my father, while he was alive, would say his dream is to see his 10 children as graduates, which he achieved in his lifetime. So, at the heart of the average Deltan is competitiveness as it relates to education. Let me give you some bare instances. This is January. Most of us are being called now, I got my picking school fees. So even the parent who doesn't have money wants to pay school fees for the child. That is, wants the child to go to school. In some other climes, they would rather the child goes to learn a trade. But in Delta, the emphasis is on education. And the state government is doing its best to ensure that enough provisions are made. Right from the Ibori days, when Ibori came on, let me use the secondary education sector as an example. The schools became graded schools. We had the model schools, we had the standard schools, we had the community schools, and they were graded like that. And the government at that time, I remember, went to the bond market and took a loan. Most of those loans were used in the education sector. It was at that same time that the polytechnics were resuscitated. The one in Ozoro, the one in Ogwashuku, and then the new one in Ogara. And the government went further to even bring in foreign technical partners. I remember at that time, University of Westminster, under the IPACT higher education program, set up the structures, the curriculum for these new polytechnics. So it has been a long thing and something that has history in Delta, that education is key. So when the government looked at, and now I'm talking about these 3 new universities, the data presented to the House of Assembly was such that every year, between 18 to 25,000 people who apply to DELSU for admission spaces couldn't get admitted, Deltans or residents of Delta. How do you cure this? let's set up new universities. So, do we have the resources to set up new universities? Maybe we don't. But we have some schools that we can upgrade. And so the Anwai campus of Delsu became upgraded. That is the present Dennis Otabil University. The College of Education Agbo became upgraded to university. And the Polytechnic Ozoro became upgraded also to university. And today, these 4 universities are competing healthily. We have quite a sizable number of students. Teaching and learning is going on. And the quantity of graduates that Deltas are turning out yearly has increased. In another 2 years, when graduates will begin to come out from these 3 new universities, you will see the impact that it will have. Such that even if they want to Jakba, by way of talking, it will be qualified personnel that are buying. So the next stage would be for government to create an enabling environment to accommodate all of these specialists by the time they all come out from their various universities. And in doing this, it is not just about Delta State. It has to be a national thing. Of course, you know the way Nigeria is run. Our kind of federation is such that a lot flows from the federal down to the state. So there has to be, thank God there is a National Council on Education. So there has to be a meeting point where they will synergize. Further proof of why Delta is key educationally is that Delta is the one state that has 2 federal polytechnics. There's one in Orogun, there's one in Efrun, the PTI. Currently, we have a federal university in Okerenkoko. We have a federal university in Efrun. That's the one for petroleum. And then now we have a new one, the Federal University of Medical Sciences in Kwale. Proposed. Hopefully that will start very soon. I do not know how many states in Nigeria that that kind of portfolio from the federal government of at least 5 federal higher institutions in one state. So it is because the place is very prosperous educationally. That's why you can come in here and set up. The environment too is so good that you even have private universities, private polytechnics, private secondary schools, primary schools in Delta State. So Delta is, if you want to do an experiment on education in Nigeria, come to Delta and start. And then initially people thought that the state government wouldn't be able to fund the new universities. But as you have seen, they're going on very well. Going on very well. Because we already had manpower on ground. All we needed, let me use Agbo as an example. That is Unidel. Unidel was a college of education with a full complement of lecturers. NC had become unattractive. They barely had 200 students with full complement of lecturers. Why not convert these lecturers? Meanwhile, they were running degree programs of other universities as outlets. So why not, if these same lecturers can lecture people who are degree students, why not turn the place to university and just bring in very few others to just join them? So today, as in Agbo, so in Ozoro, and so in Anwai. Plus, in the Delta State primary and secondary school system, you find people with PhDs. So it was very easy to also say, okay, if you have a PhD, then let's move you over to the universities to lecture. So manpower wasn't an issue. We were able to tap into our human resource, even from the public service of the state. Those who had higher degrees, masters and PhDs, most of them were encouraged and they were moved to the universities to lecture. As a legislature, our role was to ensure that we gave them the enabling laws to establish them so that they will get NUC approvals, accreditation, and all, which to the glory of God, we were able to acquit ourselves very well on. Thank you.
Generally, there is noticeable overlapping in governments at different levels. There was divestiture of power and energy from the exclusive list to the concurrent list by the preceding government. You served as Commissioner for Energy at a time in Delta State. What is the ramifications of this divestiture to Delta State, and how do you see states gaining from this, particularly Delta State? What is the need for Delta?
Are you sure I want to answer this one? Now, I think the federal government should try and do better than they are doing. Exclusive, concurrent, that's okay. That is very okay. There are no issues with that. But beyond paperwork, the practicality on ground, if you limit the quantity of electricity that states can generate to maybe 15, 20, 50 megawatts and all, Asaba alone requires about 80 to 120 megawatts to have steady power supply. If you are going to do that and succeed, then perhaps the issue of our warped federation should also be addressed, such that the states become actual federating units and not the federal government having all the powers and the states going cap in hand every month in the name of FAC to collect monies. So you don't do these things in bits. It has to be total. Free the states. Some call it resource control, don't know. But for me, let there be true federalism. When there is true federalism, this country will thrive. Because every state has latent advantages. Every state in this country. But if we all sit back lazily, because there's oil money that is coming that we will share at the end of the month, those latent things that you have, you wouldn't go into them. So I do not believe in the way it is being done. I was Commissioner for Power and Energy in Delta State when the discos were sold. The discos that were sold by the federal government, virtually all of the assets, 90% of the assets, were owned by the state government. The state government invested in them, installed them from transformers to general education. And when federal government decided to sell, did they really consult the say, okay, what and what have you invested so that we can make refunds? It wasn't there. But that's how the government went ahead, got a consultant to do our asset verification. Up to now, I didn't hear that any refunds were made. So our country is such that a lot of things, beyond what you read in the papers, beyond what is in the news, there are other fundamentals that are not properly done or properly captured. If you remove the state government's investment in electricity in Delta State, if you remove it, the state will be in the Stone Age, perpetual darkness. Because everything you see, from the smallest transformer to the biggest, 90% of them were paid for, installed by the state government. So it's a good development. States will tap into it, do small IPPs here and there. But when we do the small IPPs, I'm also thinking about the environmental impact that is going to have. Would it be better that you have one major one? Would it be better that federal government thinks of financing serious research into renewable energy and all of that? So a whole lot is happening in the sector itself, but they all don't seem to be properly coordinated, and I think that's why we are still where we are, despite all the pronouncements that have been made. Ordinarily, you would think that with the pronouncements that have been made, with the concurrent list now and all, that things will be better. But you know they are not better. Maybe a few more technical things should be done. When they do those, we will see the light and then we will enjoy it. You've been here for some time now. While you were here, the light went off. Abi? So I think the states are trying. But the revenue sharing formula of this country has to change, because it is the state that actually develops the country, not the federal. Even federal roads are being repaired by states, because most of them have abandoned for some time. So I really don't want to go into those federal government things because there's a lot to say. A lot to say.
All right, so that's it. You're a practical politician. Tracing your antecedents, you've always emphasized a responsible governance and impactful approach to governance, and not just politics for the sake of politics. Let's look at the Delta State as a classical case study. How, in your estimation, will Delta State position itself to tap into the latent advantages? We can see the state is relatively peaceful and secure. Politics has been played modestly harmonious and peaceful. What are the areas you consider Delta State should pay comparative attention to position it? Arguments have ensued that the state have obvious latent capacities to stand out in exploits like we see in other climes, regardless of the shackles of the laws. Are there areas you think that politics should be played to the advantage and advancements of the state?
I wouldn't call it politics, I would call it governance. And one of those areas is the one we've already talked about, education. You can see that we've leveraged seriously on our advantage in that area. The other area where we have latent advantage, oil production, like you know, is still not concurrent. It is still exclusive. So anybody would even go there. But the one area I think Delta would do well in is in tax holidays. Give tax holidays to investors in the housing sector, investors in the business sector, so that the state will be industrialized. You will see that Asaba, as the state capital, is home to most of the businessmen from the southeast. It is because the environment is conducive for them. And the place is growing business-wise. So I think the government is doing a lot in that regard. But we need to have a concrete housing policy that allows the private sector and the public sector to interact, work together, and build public housing. That is one area where I think this government will do well to look into very seriously. For roads, Delta is trying for roads. Most of the terrible roads in the state are federal roads, which the state government again intervenes in from time to time. When you have road infrastructure, it opens up the place. It opens up the place for investments and for the industrialization. I believe that government should provide the basic amenities and let the private persons come in, which is why I mentioned the tax holidays thing. Come in and establish the industries. Government is not a known business persona. Government doesn't manage business. Government will always wreck businesses. So if we create an environment where a man comes in with his monies and he has 3, 4, 5 years tax holiday, so that he can recoup his investments, I think we'll do very well. The other area we'll look into, which is already also being looked into, is the issue of industrial parks and free trade zones, which the government has taken a notch higher in having a dedicated leadership structure for the free trade zones in Delta State. So, which is again why the end to litigations is most welcome, so that we can focus on the next steps of what we are going to make progress in. That's it.
You cannot shy away from politics proper, and I'm not likely going to let you escape easily. In Delta State, one can modestly establish that there must be something the People's Democratic Party is doing right that has kept Delta a PDP state. What is the political culture of Delta State, PDP specifically? One would have expected ordinarily that the wave of what happened in the federal elections of 2023 would have impacted and swept your party away in the state. But you swiftly reinvented yourselves and came back hot and strong. What are you doing right? And more importantly, what should be looked into going forward by your party to remain strong and unwavering?
You know when you have a forest, maybe you have baobab tree, you have iroko tree, you have pawpaw tree, you have plantain tree, and then the wind comes. The ones that are rooted will stand. The ones not rooted will. I think PDP is rooted in the state, and every government that has come has made human capital development priority. So the average Deltan is touched. One way or another, you are touched. That has helped to keep PDP not only in our minds, in our lips, but in our hearts in Delta. You know, I told you that even those who contested against PDP are all PDP. So PDP is the family. PDP is the grandfather. PDP is the great-grandfather, is the great-great-grandfather. So any which way you come, your root is in PDP. If PDP didn't groom you, you wouldn't become whatever you became. All of them. Mention one person in Delta. It is the good grooming, the good training they got in PDP that even made them to aspire under other platforms, believing that they now had the capacity to so do. Well, you know, Peking figure new cloth passing papa, but you know get rack passing papa, and what PDP has done is say, look, you are still our children, but okra not the grow passing owner, so still come. And let me just say that the doors of PDP are still wide open to take them back, take them in, and join in. I don't want to say it is a one-party state, but Delta is a PDP state, and it will remain so for a very long time. For a very long time, because it is the one party that has not changed identity since 1998-99. Others have changed from AD to ACN, ACN to AC to whatever. But PDP has remained PDP, and that is cardinal to its survival. It doesn't change nomenclature, it doesn't change name. It has remained People's Democratic Party. I think that counts for something. There must be something ingenious that the founders of this party did to keep it the way it is. Some have left and come back. Even in Delta, some left, some came back. Across the country, some have left, some have come back. Before the next elections, you will see influx into this party. It is what it is. Those who began it, and I give kudos to those who were there in 98, 99, I think they planted something, planted their tap roots, and the tap roots are just all over the place. But let's not get carried away. There's still a lot of room for improvement, and as far as the leadership of the party and of the state are concerned, we'll keep improving ourselves and keep bettering our opponents at every election. Thank you.
On the final note, sir, and simply as we can put it, some have argued that the PDP should go into measure with, like you rightly said, most of those are equally foundationally PDP, like you saw in P2B, you saw in Alhaji Kwankwaso. They are still pandering with the notion of measure ahead of 2027. Others equally come out to posit that would be lazy politics. As a politician, what are your thoughts on
Why would you say it is lazy? No, it isn't lazy politics. It took a measure to remove PDP from power in 2015. So those who say it is lazy politics, I don't know what they mean by it. If the ideologies are similar, then why not? They are similar. Why not? There's no harm in a measure or in working together or in forming a coalition. When President Shagari won his election under NPN in 1979, there was this working arrangement between NPN and NPP, such that an NPP member became Speaker House of Reps, the late Chief Edwin Ume Ezeoke. So there's absolutely nothing wrong in a coalition or in working together, by whatever name you want to call it, measure, whatever. If the leaderships of all the emerging parties agree, why not? In 2015, APGA, only a part of APGA merged to form APC. You know, some part of PDP said they were new PDP, they joined, ACN joined, and they all became APC at the end of the day. Even CPC joined. So it's, and it worked. So if it worked for them, why can't it work for us? I don't see anything wrong with that. It's like homecoming for most of those who are even talking about this measure. They are not new people. They are people that we've always known. We know ourselves, we know our sentiments, we know our different, I don't know how to put it now. We know our differences. So there are people that we can always work with. Don't forget that in 2019, Peter Obi was running me to Atiku in PDP. So I don't see anything wrong with it. I support it wholeheartedly. If it is a measure that will bring about solid governance in Nigeria, why not? I don't want to sound political, but you will agree with me that the last 8 years, our people will say Okufozo. The last 8 years was a monumental disaster in this country. No, by whatever paint you want to paint it, that today we're sending $1 for about 1,300. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's embarrassing for all those who vilified PDP. It wasn't this bad. The PDP does not look like the glorious yesterday. So if a measure will bring back solid governance with sound economic policies and all, I don't believe in what is happening now where you just wake up in the morning, whatever you see, you take. No, I mean, there has to be direction. In my view, this country is just rudderless right now. Just floating anywhere water carry you go. So, measure, I welcome it very much. If our party leadership agrees to it, accepts it, it is most welcome by those of us who are the foot soldiers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for availing us this time. Please, let's do this again soon. Immeasurable thanks to you, Honorable, for giving us this time.
By the grace of God. And thank you for coming.